welcome to another Irish Sports Daily video from irishsportsdaily.com. I am your host again, Greg Flammang. It is finally game week. Notre Dame, Ohio State. Everyone's been waiting months and months for this. We're ready to get going, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 keys to victory on offense for Notre Dame in defeating the Buckeyes next weekend at the Horseshoe. Now, to get things out of the way, these videos, when I do the top 5 victories, I'm not going to be doing a lot of like turnovers or Tyler Buchner's got to play great, right? Like those are kind of every game. He needs to play well in every game. You can't turn the ball over in every game. That's not a big secret, okay? So some of that stuff I'm going to leave out. It's more of things that are more game specific and that sort of thing. There's obviously lots of ways to win games, and you know, not everything has to go a certain kind of way, but these are the type of things that I think Notre Dame needs to focus on to win the game. Obviously, they're big underdogs, but you know that's a product of Vegas and what they they want to drive numbers and they want to drive money. So let's get into how I think Notre Dame's going to win this game on offense. Things they got to do. All right. So the first thing they got to do is win on first down, right? And that makes you unpredictable. And against a similar defense to what they're playing today, or they're going to be playing on Saturday against Ohio State. On first down in the first half, they were 6.5 yards per play on first down in the first half. Now, obviously, 28-point first half in that Fiesta Bowl against the same defense that Ohio State's going to be running. That obviously that goes really well, right? Like that's a good job. It gets you on the front foot, and it negates pressure, right? So if you are playing on schedule on first down in a game, and you've got the defense on their heels, and they know you're having a lot of successful plays on first down and that sort of thing, that negates kind of a lot of the pressure that Ohio State's going to want to bring, right? Because you're playing from behind the sticks, right, on defense, and so that kind of causes a lot of defensive coordinators to just kind of dial back and see. They want, like, you always want to bring pressure in advantageous situations, so like second and long, third and long, and that sort of thing. So if Notre Dame's at 6.5 yards per play on first down, obviously that's going to be a lot of second and short, third and short. It's going to lead to a lot of first downs and then more first down plays. In the second half, it was a lot worse, right? 2.6 yards per play. Obviously, they didn't score as much in the second half, right? It was a 7-point second half. And when Notre Dame did move the ball in the second half against Oklahoma State, that was because of a lot of good first down plays, right? So you want good openers and you want to get off on the front foot and that sort of thing. It also keeps the playbook open, right? If you are in second and short, third and short, you can run lots of things, right? You don't have to. You're not limited, right? You can run the ball, you can pass the ball, you can pass deep, you can pass short, run the ball with Tyler Buchner and that sort of thing. When you're sitting there in third and long, you know they're going to bring pressure, and you know there's only a certain amount of plays that you can run. Right. So that's not what you want to do. You want to have the full playbook open. You want the defense to be thinking about all the things that you can do. And that makes it obviously easier for you, harder for them. And, so you're winning on first down. That's going to open up things for the rest of the offense. Number 2 is be balanced. Now, look, when I say balanced, I don't mean 50-50, right? That's not what I'm talking about. It means you run what you want when you want to run it, right? So, look, you can, if like, so Notre Dame in the first half against Oklahoma State, right? They're throwing the ball all the time. That we're not balanced, but they were moving the ball, right? The problem in that game was they weren't truly balanced because when they wanted to run, they couldn't, right? If you throw the ball 30 times, right, run it 10, well, who cares if you're running the ball when you do at 6 yards a clip, right? That doesn't matter. The point is that is a balanced offense because you are doing what you want to do, and they can't stop you from doing what you want to do. Balance is being able to do whatever you want, right? And being successful at whatever you want. That's what balance is. Balance is not, we have to run for the sake of running, right? Like if they never run on first down, that could still be a balanced offense, right? Because you're choosing to do that, right? It's advantageous. The other part of that too, and I might get this into the other slides as well. Part of the balance, and that's what makes Tyler Buckner such a weapon for Notre Dame in this game is that because of his running, if you never want to, right now, maybe Notre Dame wants to get in some situations where they're going to run into whatever they want because their offensive line is doing so well, right? And if you want to run into 7-8 man boxes or whatever, if you get that and it feel like it works for you, then fine. But if you're running RPO game, if you're running zone read and that sort of thing, because of Tyler Buckner's legs, you never have to run into an unbalanced line. You never have to run into bad numbers because Tyler Buckner can just pull it and get out of there, right? And that wasn't the case last year. And so Notre Dame ran into problems last year a lot because obviously Jack Cohn is not that kind of guy, right? He's not going to pull it and run. So the defense doesn't have to worry about, they don't have to commit defenders to that. They don't have defenders thinking about that, right? It's not even in their mind. And that creates problems for the running game at times, especially last year when there was so much, especially early in the year, like there was so much movement in and out of the lineup on the offensive line. It just wasn't set, right? Notre Dame doesn't have to do that this year. I mean, granted, we don't know that Jarrett Patterson's going to play. We don't know his status. But even if they go with Andrew Kristofic, like he's played a lot of games, right? So they are going to be in a good situation on the offensive line, kind of no matter what, right? Barring something else that happens in the next week or so. Because of that, you don't have to run into bad fronts, and you don't have to do that. You can pull it, throw it out to the wide receiver on a screen, or Tyler Buckner can run it. So that helps with the balance that Notre Dame can bring to this game. Obviously, this is a big one. Now, I told you I'm not going to do the thing where I say the obvious thing, like turnovers and that sort of thing. Win up front is pretty obvious, but it's super important in this game, right? Like that, they have to be the best unit on the field for Notre Dame when they're on offense, right? And it's part of the stars, right? Like stars got to win games, and that is the stars on the Notre Dame offense. Part of them are Blake Fisher and Joe Alt, right? And those are the two kind of headliners. They're the bookends on both tackle spots. They have to be winning up front. If Notre Dame wins this game up front on the offensive line, they have a tremendous chance to win the game, because then you have time to throw. You're running the ball the way you want, and if you can move the ball, especially on the ground, Notre Dame, it's going to be very hard for Ohio State to keep them off the field, right? Like that was the whole point of Oklahoma State last year, is that like and I keep bringing up Oklahoma State because it's their defensive coordinator, right? Like, so the whole point of them is that you can't run the ball on them. And so they know they know you're always in third and long, right? Like if you can't run, you're third and long all the time. And that's when they can bring their pressure. That's what brings me back to the first point of winning on first down, right? Like you need to be able to move the ball on first down and negate the kind of pressure that they can bring on obvious pass rush situations, right? You don't want to be in a bunch of third and longs. And if the offensive line is dominating, then they're not going to be in that position, right? The offensive lines don't dominate, and you're sitting in third and long all the time, right? So this is the key to that, right? This is the most important matchup in the whole game for Notre Dame on offense, right? Is the offensive line the best unit on the field? And if they are, that's when Notre Dame is cooking, because that's the key to their team. Right, that's the key to what they want to do. It brings out the best in Tyler Buckner. It brings out the best in the backs, gives time, all those things. So this is critically important for Notre Dame. Lorenzo Styles versus Tanner McCalister. I feel like this is a not brought up enough, right? Like people talk about Ohio State's receivers against Notre Dame's defensive backs, right? And granted, on paper, it's a tough matchup, right? Everyone, you don't need to be an analytics guru genius to understand that, right? But at the same time, Ohio State brought over Tanner McCalister from Oklahoma State last year because he was so familiar with the Jim Knowles playbook. He was matched up against Lorenzo Styles a lot in the Fiesta Bowl, and Lorenzo Styles kind of had his way with him, right? Like and not just that, but these numbers, right? So 8 catches for 136 yards and 1 touchdown. McCalister was 6 of 10 against Notre Dame for 80 yards. He gave up 80 yards and he gave up 2 touchdowns. That doesn't include the play that Jack Cohn narrowly missed Lorenzo Styles on in the second half, when it was the deep post. He just overthrew him. Lorenzo Styles is running free for a 65, 70-yard touchdown, right? I keep saying this is almost a 9-catch, 200-yard, 2-touchdown performance for Lorenzo Styles. Okay, and now look, if there was Ohio State wide receiver with history, recent history against Notre Dame defensive backs to the tune of what Lorenzo Styles did in the Fiesta Bowl, that would be a huge story, right? But they don't talk about it because it's just it doesn't fit that narrative, right? Like the narrative is different. It's the Ohio State wide receivers versus the Notre Dame defensive backs. But here is a situation where Lorenzo Styles has already played against someone in the Ohio State secondary who we know is going to get big minutes, and he's been successful. Like that is a huge confidence booster, not just for Lorenzo Styles, but for Tommy Rees, for Tyler Buckner, who was obviously watching that game. Like everyone knows Lorenzo Styles can get over on Tanner McCalister. He's already done it, right? So that's going to be a big key for Notre Dame in this game, getting him going, right? Lorenzo Styles, in my opinion, is going to be working a ton out of the slot just for this specific reason, right? And not just that, but you have Michael Mayer, who's not on this, and he's going to be in the slot. And to further the point, we know how Oklahoma State dealt with Michael Mayer and Lorenzo Styles. We saw on the first touchdown drive of the game, right? The 30-yard pass for Lorenzo Styles up the seam, which was against Tanner McCalister. Michael Mayer up, from his inline position, up the seam, turns around, two players defending him. Tanner McCalister left on an island. Lorenzo Styles has his way with them, scores a touchdown, right? So there's tons of knowledge that Notre Dame has in this game that they can go into. It's not just the Ohio State receivers, right? Notre Dame receivers have a role in this too, and we already know how Lorenzo Styles has played against one of the Ohio State defensive backs. I think it's overlooked in this game, and I think that's going to be a big key. The final one: get the most out of your good drives, right? Field goals are failures in this game. You cannot be settling for field goals, right? Like that was the thing that Oregon did, right? Oregon, when they beat them, you get 4 for 4 in the red zone touchdown percentage, right? Like because look, you can have 4 scoring drives. If they're all touchdowns, that's 28 points. You can have 6 scoring drives, 4 field goals, 2 touchdowns. That's going to give you 26 points, right? Like you need to get the most out of your good drives, right? It wouldn't be a shocker for Notre Dame with a new quarterback in the first game to not be a complete juggernaut moving the ball, right? Like that wouldn't be a shocker. But when you do move the ball, 4 or 5 scoring drives, if they're touchdowns, now you're getting into the 30s, right? And that doesn't even include like some fluky thing, recover a fumble for a touchdown, right? Or you block a punt for a touchdown, something like that. There's other ways to get points. I think about the Notre Dame Clemson game from 2020, right? And in the first one, Notre Dame had a ton. They were moving the ball a ton, right? They had 6 scoring drives. Ian Book fumbled inside the 5, coming up on 7 scoring drives in regulation. But a lot of those were field goals, right? So it limited their points. They weren't so efficient in the red zone, right? That could have been a 40 plus low 50 point game from Notre Dame on offense, but they weren't. They weren't very efficient, right? And could Notre Dame have 6 or 7 scoring drives against Ohio State? Like, yes, they could, right? Like that wouldn't be a shocker, right? I do think we just generally speaking, I do think we are overlooking the fact that quick changes can be made to a defense, right? And because we assume Ohio State was bad on defense last year, they're going to be bad this year. In 2016, Notre Dame's defense was awful. They were a sieve, right? They couldn't stop anyone, right? And then you bring in a competent defensive coordinator like Mike Elko, and suddenly they're holding Georgia to 19 points, in their September matchup, right? So defense can improve quickly. It's not like it can't. Okay, so I don't view Ohio State's defense the same way. Any sort of competent coaching, right? Like you're gonna improve on that side of the ball. That's not a huge problem, right? But I do think Notre Dame should still be able to move the ball. 4 or 5 scoring drives isn't asking too much from a Notre Dame football team with the kind of talent that they have in the opener, right? So, but when you do move the ball, you have to get the most out of your good drives. Field goals are failures. That's not going to work, especially against an Ohio State team who never loses if you give up 30 plus, right? Like if they score 30 plus, they're going to win all the time. Credit Brendan McClendon, who's been talking about this for like a year almost, from 1 Foot Down. So that's kind of what he's discovered, and that's his research. So good job by him. So that's the key, in my opinion. And so those are the 5 keys, the top 5 things Notre Dame has to do to win the game. You know, like I said in the opener, there's lots of ways to win, right? Like if we had said Jack Cohn is going to throw for 500 yards or whatever it was in the bowl game, you would have assumed Notre Dame wins, right? Like if Notre Dame was was scoring 35 plus points against Oklahoma State, no way they lose that game, right? No one would have predicted what Spencer Sanders did. No one would have predicted what happened defensively in the second half, right? Especially against that team, right? So you don't know how games are going to go. What I would say is, the other key to the game is Notre Dame needs to keep at it, right? It would not be a shocking thing to see Ohio State go up, 14-0 or 7-0 or whatever, right? Like if Notre Dame comes out slow, and Ohio State comes out clicking, right? The point is we saw what happened in the Fiesta Bowl, right? Oklahoma State didn't stop coming, right? They kept coming, right? Like you can always figure something out, and when you figure something out, then you hammer it and you hammer it and you hammer it until the game's over, right? And so Notre Dame needs to keep the faith, no matter what, right? Like don't get down by anything that happens. You need to keep the faith. You need to stay on your plan, right? And once the plan is, once the plan's figured out, you know what you can do, and you get a rhythm against them. That's when you go, and now you're cooking, right? So Notre Dame needs to stay patient. They need to stay confident, and no matter what happens, and even if they come out humming, right? Like don't get too head over your head or head over your skis or whatever. Because obviously it can go the other way too. So anyway, those are the keys I see to victory for Notre Dame in this game. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I'm going to be doing defense tomorrow. We're going to be talking about those keys to victory. I'm going to have a hit and hustle later on this week with Jamie Uyama, talking about just kind of an overview of everything. We're going to have all the press conferences and that sort of thing, and that's going to be covered extensively on Irish Sports Daily. So stick with us. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you very soon.